Welcome to episode 118 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and that Jeff Goldblum spared no expense with his cool telepods.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and I find it very creepy that we're recording this episode on the fly, and there's a fucking fly in my office. Hopefully, nothing goes awry.
I've had nonstop flies in my office this week. Like, I'm not even kidding. It's like I watched this and now I see them everywhere.
They just think they've been invited, man. That's what it is.
So, speaking of people who think they've been invited. Oh, no. Danger Slater's back, everybody.
Welcome.
Welcome back to the show, man.
Second appearance.
That's right. He did Society.
Yeah, I got a thing for gross out movies, I guess.
Hey, I'm loving it. So, it's... Can I just say, like, you suggested The Fly, and I was like, dude, that's cool. That would be great. And I was like, I haven't seen this in probably 15 years, and holy shit, it holds up.
Yes, 100%.
So good. And
yeah.
But I would say the same about Society. Like, I think the practical effects looked really good as well. So I admire your taste in films.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked it because I've told James several times, I'm like, or at least when he announced that this was on the schedule, I'm like, finally, we get to do this.
Yeah. Well, actually, I gave James a list of like 5 or 6 movies.
You did, yeah.
And he's like, no, I've wanted to talk about The Fly. We've wanted to do this on the podcast. So he's like, this is the one we're doing. And I'm like, yeah, good. I think this was the first one I mentioned too.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
You had some other good ones on there. We'll get to them in time. But no, that's the weird part of always allowing the guests to pick the film. Is we have films like Alien. Nobody's done Alien, like
strangely
it's finally
enough.
Spoken for, and she's going to do it in the future soon. But like, it's just weird how we're like 130 episodes in, and we have like these huge movies that you would think we would have covered by now, So yeah. So aside from you gave me a list and I picked this one, why did you put The Fly on the list to begin with? What is it about The Fly?
Well, I mean, like we were just saying, I kind of always had a thing for kind of gross out body horror. And this movie is one of the best examples, I would say, of the genre. Not just from the practical monster effects, but it has a really great story around it, too. And Cronenberg's got a lot of good movies, and this is, I think, probably his best, or at least one of his most accessible ones. So yeah.
No, I do agree. I think that this is his best, at least out of the ones I've seen. I haven't seen all of them, but I mean, anytime that his name comes up, like if we're talking about another film, like just in my daily life and like Videodrome, for instance, like I mentioned these other films, it always comes back to The Fly. Like I feel like everyone, I've never met anyone that hates this film. I'm sure they're out there, but they're very covert. They know they'll get in trouble. No,
if they hate anything, the only thing they possibly hate are the way this movie made them feel about certain things. There's no way that there's any dislike for this movie or valid dislike for this movie.
I've always wondered if there's somebody out there that's like, oh, the original is so much better. It's got a cool ending, though.
Yeah,
what were you going to say?
I did a cursory glance at the Wikipedia on this, and this was a big hit back in its day. 86, I guess it came out, and it just kind of blows my mind that a horror movie like this was being consumed by mass audiences at some point. Because if this came out today, it would be not, I don't know about an indie movie, but it would definitely be very kind of directed towards the niche audience that is into it, and not kind of I don't think it would have the kind of wide release that a movie, a gore movie would get.
Yeah, I agree. I could see it going straight to something like Shudder, where, like you said, like the audience that wants this is at. But like, I couldn't decide, because I was thinking about this while I was watching it, and I couldn't decide if it was the casting because like the casting was very mainstream. It was very like these people that you watch everything they're in, but it's also like the structure of the film, like we do get this nice love story romance thing, and we get all this stuff, and then we're getting like little drops of stuff, and then it just goes to hell. But by then, you've already been in the theater for an hour.
It's a big thing. What's a big thing? It's a big boon to the movie's testament or whatever. I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say. The first 10 minutes of this movie, where it opens at that it's like some sort of art gallery show, some society dinner. People are having a cocktail where Jeff Goldblum, as the scientist, is talking to Gina Davis, the reporter, and he convinces her to go back to his house, presumably to hook up, but he also wants to show off his invention to her. And you get almost everything you need for the entire movie in that first 10 minutes. It's just very compact. It doesn't feel forced. Like, you understand who he is, who she is, why he's doing what he's doing, how his machine works, so that when it stops working the right way, you're already on board and understand what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I would point people to if they were like trying to figure out how to write the beginning of a script or the beginning of a book. Like, the way this jumps in is so solid. It literally just starts with, what am I working on? Well, we're mid-conversation. We don't need all the setup. We don't need shots of the whole room first, and we don't need to see them work towards each other. Like, it is so good. We get so much characterization in that first conversation, from her playing the whole, I got to do other interviews, and like, but still hanging around. There's so much good characterization here. It's just fucking solid.
Yeah, and tap dancing around it. I mean, it as you both pointed out, they go right to the story, as opposed to other scientific movies. It's you don't get the experiment until halfway through, and you don't have any information about what the invention is or anything else like that. But you also get a glimpse into his psyche and how he works and kind of how much he enjoys what he's doing, because when she's asking him these questions, he thinks like, this is my baby, this is my project, whatever. And he's talking to her, and then once she realizes, oh shit, there's a story here, she hits the tape recorder. So you realize what her priorities are, what her motivation is, but also what Brundle's motivation is as well, because I'm not completely sold that he's trying to get laid that night. It's almost like he has to fucking tell somebody what he's doing, because he's been hiding it from the people who've been working on it with him.
I mean, I think he's still trying to get laid.
No, he is. But what I'm saying is, like, he's as excited to tell her about this, but it's not a thing of like, I'm telling you this so you'll do me. I'm telling you this because I want to tell somebody. And yes, I want to have sex.
Let's celebrate. Yeah, totally.
He would have showed off the machine to anyone that came in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. But I even like the characterization of what she picks to put into the telepod. Like, that is straight flirting. That is straight like I feel like she still doesn't believe him. Like she's still playing the game from her point of view, right? But it's the thought process that goes into it. Like, she's kind of looking for something else to give him, but then she goes straight for the pantyhose after that. Like, I really like that deep level of characterization and the thought process that isn't spelled out for us.
Well, that, and she didn't go, because my wife watched it with me this time. I watched it a couple of times, but it's been a while since I watched it. So as a kid, this scene didn't do anything for me. I just thought like, oh, okay, cool, she's giving him something. As an adult, there's partially that flirtation, but then you also question like, what else is going on here? Why not another item of clothing? Why not the shoe? And then in my head, I thought, it was like, well, it's not a Tarantino movie, so they're not going to include the shoe. But yeah, the whole way that she actually takes the pantyhose off, it's not simply, oh, let me just, boom, take it off or pull this off. It's, let me hike up my dress a little bit, put my hand in here, and then slowly, seductively pull this off, as opposed to, here's, boom, here's my pantyhose, try it out, prove to me that this thing works.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Danger. Like this first 10 minutes or however long, maybe I've gone over 10 now, I don't know. But like this whole thing, this should be taught in classes if it's not. Yeah. Like this is screenwriting at its best.
There's so much to this that is just good filmmaking, like beyond just the story itself. I also noticed that there's three characters basically. There's Brundle, there's Gina Davis's character. I forgot her name offhand right now.
Ronnie.
Ronnie. And then her boss at Particle Magazine and / ex-lover. And those are the three main characters. You don't get a fourth character in this movie until the 50-minute mark.
Right.
Wow.
So that's when Brundle goes to the bar and picks up that girl and does that arm wrestling scene. But before that, like, there's literally not another character.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh. Like there's one scene where she's at the men's store buying him a jacket, but those aren't, those are just kind of extras,
right.
People working at the
background.
Store. So, yeah.
They literally don't even need to be in the scene. Like you could still have the setting without the people standing there. So they are not important to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they're listening to the show, in which case we loved your performance.
But like there's so much, like, and the fact that there's like maybe 2 or 3 sets for the whole movie, most of it takes place in a warehouse, right. which is his office / apartment. And then a little bit in her apartment, and then a little bit in, like there's a few scenes like a doctor's office or her boss's office. So like the fact that you have such, a small cast and so few locations, but it is completely organic to the story. It doesn't, what is it I'm trying to say here? It's just good. It's just good filmmaking, right? Like it's just because you don't notice that these things are happening, that this is actually stuff that's saving them a lot of money and keeping the story tight.
Right. I literally did not notice at all. So I was that invested in the story. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah. Jeez. I mean, my one complaint with the screenwriting would be that they don't know how to name characters. But other than that, just kidding. No, that's one of those things that we talk about all the time in screenwriting world now is like, try to keep it at one location or limited locations. But sometimes you really feel it. Like you're just in the same house in different rooms, unfriended, but, and sometimes like this, like I didn't notice at all how much they were saving on the budget. I hope they were able to make their money back.
They had to spend it all on the monster effects at the end.
Right? They look good, though. Yeah. While we're talking monster effects, the dream sequence, I'm not a fan of dream sequences. They piss me off. But this one, I love the monster. The little larva thing she gives birth to. Fantastic. Anyway, where would you like to go next, man?
Oh, I don't know, man. There's this thing where he sends a monkey through kind of towards the beginning. It's his first test to send living flesh through. We find out that there's a problem with the teleporter. It can only send inanimate objects, and when it sends living things through, it gets all screwed up, and it turns this monkey inside out, and it's horrifying. And then maybe 5 minutes later, he figures it out, and he sends a different monkey through. And I was just like, where is he getting all these monkeys?
I was wondering that too. Like, are there more back there?
Yeah, well, presumably if you go to a kind of monkey dealer, right? Or I guess they're baboons, but you go to one and they sell you it, and then you show up 2 weeks later and you're like, oh yeah, I need a new one. They're going to be like, what the fuck did you do to this baboon?
Bringing it in a little paper bag like Job in Arrested Development.
Well, I'm going to say as somebody who watched or who put up with the Joe Exotic Tiger King documentary or docuseries, I think it's a lot easier than we typically think of, because after watching that, I went down this rabbit hole of all these people with private zoos and seeing the animals that they have, and just realizing if he had the money to do it, which he was getting, of course, from the company, and then paying these other guys for their devices and whatever, I'm pretty sure that he was able to find some seedy animal dealer and get a baboon for a couple of $100, or at least in the 80s, I'm sure it was probably just a few $100s. To test out his equipment, but even then you kind of question, why wouldn't he start with, I don't know, something smaller like a rat or a guinea pig or something like that,
hermit crab or something. Like,
it'd be less to clean up.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so a couple things. I think maybe it's supposed to be that it's close to a human. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's that, how are we going to teleport humans? But maybe he did start with those kind of things. Maybe something smaller works better. But he also makes it abundantly clear that he's been having a problem with flesh. So I'm kind of wondering how many baboons went down before this.
Yeah, that the one that survives comes bounding out of the teleporter and just runs up to him and hugs him. And I'm like, you dumb bastard, you have no idea how close you were to turning inside out.
Like, kind of about Stockholm syndrome. But yeah, totally. I mean, I don't know. Ronnie kind of does that at the end with her man too, right?
Yeah, there's a whole lot going on. Well, even when he gets introduced, when Stathis gets introduced, he's.
God, I hate his name.
Oh yeah, he's rejecting her story, right? You're thinking like, oh, typical editor. He's the guy who's running the magazine, blah blah blah. And the next time you see him, he's in her shower at her apartment. I'm thinking like, what the? And of course, you put two and two together, and looking at this film in the 80s, it's not that big of a deal, because there are a lot of movies where you kind of see these toxic relationships that haven't been identified as toxic yet, or at least been given the attention for being so toxic, or at least where boundaries are being crossed, as opposed to the 21st century, where now we're more aware of, oh, that's kind of a fucked up situation. Even when he says like, or when she asked for her key back and he's like, oh, I think I'll just keep it. Like, no. Think about the safety that this woman does not have, knowing that this guy is in her apartment or has access to her apartment. And his excuse was, well, I figured you wouldn't change the locks. Like, this dude deserved what happened to him.
Yeah. Are you not supposed to give your boss a key to your apartment?
Well, I mean, it's weirder that you give them to people for every podcast you go on. I'm not even anywhere near you. I can't use this key.
Come home and James is in my shower.
I feel like in the 80s, that might have been a good pickup line in a movie, though. Like, can't you just picture like Bill Murray in somebody's shower and he's like, so you want to go have dinner? Like this seems like 80s logic to me, that this was a good way to hit on people.
100%. It's like, well, you've already seen me naked.
Well, I mean, How I Met Your Mother has the theory that if you just get naked like 1 out of 3 times, you'll hook up with somebody. So maybe this is a continuing thing, and it's just not something I've ever done. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never shown up in somebody's apartment.
I was going to say, you don't have to admit whether you've done it or not. It's okay. So, but no, their whole relationship is like today we would view it as very, very toxic, like you said. But I also feel like it's kind of good in this situation with this story. Like, I feel like it really provides reasons that he would be hovering around, and reasons that, she would semi-trust him, and also reasons why at the end he would care enough to put up a fight for her, right? Like, I don't know. So it works story-wise for me, but yeah, really fucking creepy in real life.
But he's positioned as the bad guy in the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
And he kind of ends, it's not like he gets a redemption arc, but he does save her.
Yes.
It's not like we're like, oh, she should have been with him the whole time. It's like, no, something happened to Brundle that made him so much worse.
Right. Yeah, we're still like, you still need to walk away from this. Nobody's hoping they end up together.
Well, she's the only one who can walk away at this point. So
Yeah, exactly. But, you know.
He's like, I dissolved my hand for you. I deserve at least one more parting hookup.
Oh, man, that's such incel thinking. I gave up my hand for you. You owe me.
There's got to be some sort of like ratio of body parts given up to, getting a little something on the side.
There you go. Start working on that. That'll be a huge series that'll come out on Netflix next year.
Listen, I have no legs, so me and you need to get this going.
Oh, man. I feel like this is a dangerous path to keep following.
This might be one of those moments that we're like, maybe this is we cut this one. We'll see. I don't know. See how it plays.
It's going to be Yakuza speed dating. It's like, I'm going to start with my pinky.
Oh my god. Oh wow. So this film obviously one of the big themes is, the line of how much humans can control nature and that whole area. It's not as direct as usual. It's not like he's trying to meld himself with a fly and that theme that we usually get, but he's trying to override the forces of nature and teleport places, right? So I guess my question to you, Don, because I know this is one of your favorite themes to talk about. This isn't really a Frankenstein kind of thing, no. but we end up with the creation of a monster because we're fucking with science. So you want to walk me through your thoughts on this?
Okay. And I feel like you're looking over my shoulder. Did you have a key to my house when you walked in?
I'm not giving it back.
Unlike Ronnie, I will change the locks. There's always this discussion, and of course, I'm going to mention a movie that I would save for the end. But whether we're talking about The Fly or Jurassic Park, there's that discussion of the balance between science and humanities, or at least the importance of having humanities in your scientific education, because science teaches you what you can do. Humanities teaches you why that might or might not be a good idea. And I think this just goes with, I would just say, human history of trying to manipulate nature to its will, or to our will, to either prolong our lives or the ecosystems that we live in, or, just make conveniences for us. So I think the real problem here is, even with Brundle, I like his rationale, because just to go back to the beginning, you understand that one of the reasons why he created this was he gets nauseous very easily from traveling. Doesn't fly, doesn't like being in a car. I think he even mentioned something about riding a bike made him nauseous. But just the idea that this is a way to make traveling more convenient for people like him that might get sick, right? But there's also the idea of shortening commutes, shortening the distance between the time and distance between people and things. And I don't know, it just the general rationale he gives for creating it. I like the belief in that this is going to be better for mankind. I don't buy, because there's always a drawback when we start talking about making something better. If it's electric vehicles, there's of course the materials that you need to create the lithium batteries and things like that. And in a lot of cases, the way that the lithium or any of the supplies are mined is not necessarily the most ethical or, environmentally logical ways to get those things. But this is a good way to think about how at least your quest to create better technology or advance humanity scientifically can backfire on you, especially when you don't pay attention to your surroundings.
Well, Brundle has a tragic flaw. He's the victim of his own hubris in this. So you don't, as charming as Jeff Goldblum plays the character, and you really like him in the beginning of this movie, especially when he's trying to charm Gina Davis, and you're like, they make a great pair. But he's not only too driven, he just can't see that he may or may be wrong about anything. you know, and you don't necessarily, you do feel bad for him, but you don't, because it's kind of his own fault that he ends up in the situation he's in. He impulsively goes into the machine because he's a little drunk and jealous that she had to run out in the middle of the night to deal with her boss.
Right.
Yeah, he doesn't even follow up. There's no communication. There's no like asking questions. There's no following her. No nothing. You know, like he's just like, oh, clearly she wants to go have sex with her boss. I'm going to jump into this thing.
But here's the thing, though. That part, considering where we all were at that age, let's just say he's in his his mid 20s at this point, not 30 yet. Which, you know, some people don't mature until probably like the 50s and 60s. But if he has been isolated, oh God, I'm going to start defending incels. I'm sorry. Let me pull this back a little bit.
Incel cast.
I can understand that, not necessarily that paranoia, but that insecurity that you would have at that age or in that type of relationship where this is somebody that he's let in. This is someone he's let into his personal space, into his workspace, find out about his invention. He shared this with this person. So it's more than just this sexual relationship, right? It's more than just this romantic relationship. There's also the idea that he feels like he's being used because, you know, this has been dropped off on his doorstep. This is from Particle Magazine. Okay, this guy, you know, used to be with her. Oh, shit, I'm being used. And I was thinking we had something here. She went off with him. So, yeah, he probably, you know, hits the bottle a little bit more. And in this period of poor decisions, decides that he's going to jump into the machine because maybe it's not about proving anything to her at that point. Now it's about proving it to himself even more.
Yeah, and it's the disconnect between the humanity of the situation and his own, you know, emotional state and his, you know, he thinks he deserves these things because he's brilliant.
Right.
You know, he thinks he's right because he's so smart, you know, and he takes one wrong step and that's all it takes to undo everything.
And it could all be solved. Of course, we wouldn't have as good of a movie, but it would all be solved by, hey, what's actually going on? Or if he just decided, I'm going to wait until she gets back and ask her this, as opposed to, fuck it, I'm going to jump in the telepod and do this.
I mean, I think that changes the movie, obviously, but I feel like he would have still gotten in and maybe the fly's still in there. So then, like, it would just become a movie where Gina's around more while he's going through it. But,
right.
But I will say, going back to what Danger was saying about how his hubris is the catalyst and the accelerator, really. Like once he starts feeling better, like he's been fused with the fly, he's got super strength. He's, you know, his reflexes are faster. He thinks that he's improving humanity. Like this teleporting somehow makes you better. And then when anyone else, obviously just Gina in this case, but I think if there was a cast of 20 and they were all telling him he was wrong, it would come down to, I'm the fucking scientist. You don't know anything. And I think that plays so well in his reactions. And while he does become angry really fast, I think it makes perfect logical sense. And I think that it really plays into the person we've already seen the whole time, which goes back to me saying what a great script this is.
Yeah.
And performance for that matter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's so great how it starts off with like, this is kind of a superhero origin story. And then it immediately turns into just like monster movie. You know, like you get like 10 minutes of him just being like, I'm now a gymnast and I can lift things that are super heavy. And you're like, oh, cool. This is what a Marvel movie would be, except it doesn't go past that part. They just get the super strength and that's it.
Well, you know, even with that, there's that when you're talking about him improving humanity, what you also start to see, and I wrote down on my notes, the toxic masculinity and the whole idea of a male gaze with this, right? So it could be argued that in making this film, or at least from Brundle's perspective, strength, speed, the insatiable sexual appetite, all that stuff, right, is part of making humanity, or let's even reduce it further than that, not humanity, but men better, right? This is what women want. They want a strong man who can fuck all day and all night, as opposed to that wasn't what Gina Davis gave a shit about. That's not the person that she actually got attracted to. And I think a lot of guys, especially when you talk about superhero origin stories, a lot of guys, especially incels, who watch any of this stuff, whether it's like Thor or Captain America or whatever, right? They see the physique and they first think to themselves, and because some article was talking about that the superhero physiques are all based off the male gaze of what men think women actually want. And, oh, if I get super, ripped or, buffed out, all these women are going to want to fuck me. And they're not thinking about, maybe it's your personality that's shitty, dude. It's not necessarily your physique. And what you see here is this moment where he does get pissed off with Ronnie because she can't, quote unquote, keep up with him, and states, I need to go find somebody else. Well, you know what? Why don't you go on the machine? Then you can keep up with me. Oh, you're not going to go on the machine? I'm going to go find somebody who will. I'm going to find somebody who can keep up. So his judgment, his perspective becomes clouded because now you start to see how this hyper masculinity takes over as well. So it's not just the Fly, but the Fly is enhancing what may have been, some of the underlying issues that he was already having with insecurity and exactly who he is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's built in right from the first moment they hook up after he comes out, where I think they had sex for like 5 hours or some ridiculous time like that. And it's obvious that he's overcompensating or trying to see how long he could go. And it's also obvious that she's not enjoying this. It's not about her at all. It's only about him and his prowess and what he thinks he can do. And yeah, like you said, the second that she expresses herself, that she's like, this isn't what I want, he's like, well, fuck you then.
Yeah, it reminds me of that scene from American Psycho where Christian Bale's character is having sex with the two women, and he looks into the mirror and starts flexing. It's not even about sexual enjoyment; it's about ego.
Yeah,
and he's just watching himself have sex with these women in the mirror, and then just starts flexing his muscles to, I don't know, it just adds something else to it.
That's a great comparison. I'm kind of surprised they didn't do like some crazy sex scene that she could only do with the Fly, like he had to like hold her to the ceiling or some shit, But no, it's weird. Like, it didn't feel this way watching it, but as we're talking about it, I'm like, wow, this movie got really rapey. Like he's solely trying to put her in the telepod to keep up with him sexually when she says no. Like, that's pretty rapey. And then he's like, cool, I'm going to go find somebody else. And he brings that girl home and she doesn't want to go in there. And he's like violently pulling her towards it, like, man, this film got way more rapey than I thought it was. Not that it's actually rapey, but like the motivations are there.
But there is the consent issue. There is the whole persuading someone or I forgot the other word. But there's the whole idea of no is not an acceptable answer to whatever I have to say.
I would say the consent goes even further, because when she finds out she's pregnant, she immediately is like, I need to get this out of me. I don't know what the hell's inside of me right now.
Right.
And there's like 5 guys telling her, oh, you sure you want to do this? Why don't we just wait a second? Let's not do this. The doctor's telling her no. Her boss is telling her no. Like, maybe you don't want an abortion. And she's like, I have a monster inside of me or something. I don't know what it is. And it needs to stop right now. We need to get it out before her dream or premonition or whatever that was comes to fruition.
Yeah. And I mean, also, that just what you just said about all these guys making the choices for her, like, that's so on point today. And we're looking at this film from 35 years ago. And it really bugs me that we're still in the same place, more or less, with that.
Well, here's my question while you think about that one, James. My question is this. And it's something I thought about while I was watching this film and thought about it in comparison to some other films or just real life for that matter. Should you actually care about somebody when they're being self-destructive? I mean, other than hoping that they get help, with Gina Davis's character, it seems like she keeps going back and feels like there's this duty to help him, or at least a duty to somehow fix him or whatever. But, if someone is refusing all help, all advice, and they're convinced, as one of you said earlier, I know what I'm doing, I'm a scientist. Should you even give a shit about their, caring for them, taking care of them, if they're just bent on their own self-destruction?
I think the it's not that should you care, like it's that can you help yourself from caring? Like if you're emotionally invested with someone, you will ignore the things, the red flags going, this person is going to take you down with them if you keep coming here.
Right.
And a logical response to that would be like, oh, there needs to be a line. And once they're on the other side of the line, I can't cross it because, I tried. But when you are emotionally invested, as she was with Brundle, she can't help herself. She's going to show up until the bitter end, essentially.
Yeah, I agree. I will just echo, I don't think it's should you, but just how do you stop it?
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes you need to stop it and you still find reasons not to, or there's just enough that justifies it, or there's just the guilt of like, if I don't do it, who will? So I think that I think all humans make that mistake on some level. And I hope sometimes it works out for people, because it doesn't seem to for me.
Well, here's the other thing, and I guess I just phrased it. You could have phrased it a little bit differently or added on to it. But there's not really that, other than dealing with Sathis, right? There's not really a moment where Ronnie says, oh, I'm going to bring some doctors here to look at you, or I'm going to, I think there's a moment where she suggests him going to the doctor, but why not bring some experts in or have somebody look at him, do some testing or whatever? Because even then, it seems like Brundle should be willing to go and see what the fuck is going on with him. Once, once you start seeing his skin change and his ear falls off. And of course, everybody's favorite scene where he starts pulling out his fingernails. There should be this moment, or at least traditionally or conventionally, there's always this moment where somebody says, I'm going to get you help. Whether we're talking about somebody with addiction problems, whether that happens to be substance abuse, gambling, sex, whatever, or an abusive relationship. There's always this moment where typically in a film, where somebody goes to get some help for that person or bring somebody into that space. And I just wonder, how different would it have looked if it had been, let's say, a medical professional as opposed to Sathis showing up late in the film, or someone else, approaching. I'm sure he had family. That would have been a great thing, as far as like, hey, I called your mom and I told her you went in the machine, and then the mom shows up with a fly swatter.
That would be my mom. She'd be like, I knew you'd mess this up,
Just part fly, Mom. God.
You're always mad. But I don't know who you'd go to though. Like it's not like this is a normal disease.
I think the problem is he's the smartest person in the room, right? Mm-hmm. So if he can't help himself, who actually can help him? Like, what is a doctor going to be able to do to reverse splicing your genes with a fly?
Oh, well, speaking of
put it that way,
I love because James and I messaged each other earlier about this and talking about the aging of the film and the story and everything works, but then of course the technological stuff is obviously aged, but it doesn't age the film in the sense of making the film worse. It just gives you a snapshot of that time period of the 80s. And when Brundle is communicating with the computer, I just find it hilarious the way that he deals with the computer, because he's asking the computer the questions the same way that we talk to Google or Siri. And In all honesty, if you updated this film, that would be the same. He would just be talking to the computer as opposed to typing things in, and the computer would probably be talking back to him if that. But just the idea of like, what happened to Brundle, or what happened last telepod experiment? What happened in here? And then it just explains like Brundle, sample 2, not Brundle, and just how he starts to put things together. Of course, it has a nice little 3D rendering of, oh, it's a fly, and the reveal that there was a fly in there with you. Oh, you're in big trouble now, buddy. But the technological inclusion here, I think, is great. Even looking at this from 2021 eyes, to look at back where technology was in 1986 for a sci-fi movie, that they didn't do something ridiculous in that room. It was simply these 2 little pods, or really 3, these 3 pods in the room, and then a computer bank, or at least a computer area. And they didn't do anything crazy with it. They didn't have I forgot what that lightning machine was, or any of these, the Tesla coils or anything like that in the room that you would expect in some of the older sci-fi films, when they're trying to explain to you, like, hey, there's an experiment going down in this room. We can't have an experiment unless we have the thing that has the lightning that goes up between the 2 antenna.
Yeah, if they updated this, the only thing that would be different is the actual graphics on the computer screen.
Right.
The pods would look similar. Like it's just going to be a thing you walk into. The computer bank would be the same size. The way he's talking to it and the way it's responding, which is like very 2001 Space Odyssey, like that. Right. How that computer's threatening him. Not that this computer's threatening him, but just the responses that come are very, like you just said, sample 2 is not Brundle. Like, how horrifying and like frank that is. There's no softening that blow. It's just like, what the fuck does that mean? So I
can't help but wonder, like, could he have just put some coding in, like, hey, if there's a sample 2 that's not Brundle, don't fucking mix them. Like, just put that thing over here, like, just teleport the fly with me. My one complaint with the technology is something that I feel wasn't necessary. And it's all the cords running to the telepods, because I don't see how this works from a distance. Like, if the cords have to be connected to the same computer, so that the most I can ever move is 20 feet, like, I'm just supposed to keep popping into others and moving the whole time? I don't know.
But James, it's a prototype, man.
But it doesn't make sense to me, because the cords didn't need to be there. Like I get it, but I don't like. I wish that one of the telepods was like in another room, or like something like that. Even if it's just a wall, like just something that would show me you can go a distance, because I feel like they're both plugged into the same computer. So what good is this? And today, I think that would change. Today, I think you're going from one side of the building to the other, or some shit like that. I think that we'd get rid of the cords, because everything's wireless. We don't even like our keyboards to have cords, like, so like, I feel like that's the one thing that would change, but it's one of those little details that I just sat there, and once it was in my head, I was just annoyed with it. So I had to throw it out there and ruin everyone else's life too.
But it actually ends up being a bit of a plot point.
Yes, it does.
Because
continue.
He has to, what was the boss's name again?
Stathis,
like literally severs the cord to save her.
Yes. Let me call him Carl. That's easier. No. But yeah, no, that's kind of my problem with it, because I'm like, that even proves that the cord has to be there for it to work. And that just like ruins this whole teleportation thing for me. I don't know. But it is a prototype. I get it. And it's not like we could upload people to the cloud at that point.
Maybe they're just shrinking people down and literally sending them like through the cord, like shooting them through a pipe or something, like pneumatic tubes.
That'd be great. Get in like you're at the bank and it just shoots you over. It'd be like Kong and Godzilla, and they did that. So we now have these crazy tubes that get you to China in 5 seconds. But we'll never talk about them again. Anyway, I digress. so that was the only thing that really pulled me out. I just think it'd be cool if we were seeing an actual movement, even if it was one room. I just think that adds something to it.
Yeah. Especially since that's his ultimate goal, is to get rid of transportation altogether and only have teleportation as the means for people to get around.
Can you imagine what a fucking mess that would be? Like, I've been at airports recently. I know how many people there are. If we were all trying to do this, people would be getting merged nonstop, and it'd just be terrible. And then white people would be mad that they got merged with the wrong people. I mean, this would just... you know I'm right. Like, that was only half a joke there.
You sure it wasn't 3/5 of a joke? But boom.
You win. I'm not even editing that out. That was so hardcore. It was great. Jesus. But yeah. What else do you guys got?
I want to talk about Jeff Goldblum's performance because we didn't really touch on that, because he is, I think, perfectly cast he kind of has fly-like qualities to begin with. He's got these big bug eyes, and he's very, like, kind of staccato-y in the way he talks, like a little quick. And he just starts playing into that more and more as he starts degrading into this thing that he's becoming. And there's maybe like 3 or 4 iterations he goes through before he just transforms completely into, a giant puppet monster by the end of the film. And he just kind of nails every step of the way. Like, you are like, oh, I could see how we went from A to B, now from B to C, now from C to D. And there's no, like, I don't know, it's like when you watch a movie and someone's pretending to be drunk and you're like, that's not how a drunk person acts. There's that disconnect of like, that's wrong. Like, it doesn't feel wrong. He's just like the right person to carry this through.
I'm going to start this by saying something that will immediately make people hate me. I have never been a big Goldblum fan. Like, I normally don't get it. Like Jurassic Park, I'm like, yeah, that's great. Whatever. It could be anybody. Like, it does nothing for me. This film is the direct opposite of this. Like, I would give him award after award for this fucking film. And it's exactly what you were saying. It's the step A, step B, step C. It's all these little changes. But he not only incorporates characteristics of the Fly, like speaking faster. Like, there's that scene where she's eating and he's just rambling. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a fly buzzing near you. It's so fucking solid. But he also keeps where the scientific part of him should be for each part of the transformation. And that was fascinating to me, that he can incorporate the two, and there's multiple versions of these two. That's what blew me away with this.
Okay. Yeah. Because you can be easy. You can do it easily by. And for some reason, the Jamie Foxx's performance as Ray Charles stands out to me as far as a comparison with this, where when he was being interviewed, he said, "Oh, it's pretending to be blind is not easy." He said, most people, he was like, "Oh, I can close my eyes and pretend I'm just like this guy." So no, you have to turn off this ability to, see, right? So I'm not thinking about the stuff that I have seen or the things that I'm used to seeing. Like, I need to consider, like, walking through a room with no help. I need to consider, paying more attention to sound and touch. And I think what Jeff Goldblum does in this is he doesn't take the easy route by, oh, here's some funny things that flies do, right? We all know about the sugar thing. So there's that, a couple of gags where he's got the sugar and he's putting more sugar into his coffee, and to where Gina Davis's character asks him, like, hey, do you want some coffee with your sugar? But there's also these moments where you're not expecting it, because he shakes his head so quickly a couple of times in the film in the same manner that a fly would, where he's having a straight on conversation with someone. Eyes are darting all over the room. He's not even looking at the person he's talking to. His eyes keep going back, forth, up, down while he's having this high-paced conversation, or at least high-paced, monologue in a lot of cases, because no one gets a word in edgewise, and he's selling it. And I think that's just one of the great things about him in this film, or at least with Goldblum in this film, is that it's not a thing of like, hey, go in there and just pretend you're a fly. Yeah. He obviously had someone who clued him in on, or possibly just did the research himself, on how a fly's behavior would be. And especially how a fly's behavior would be in the size of a human being.
Yeah, and kind of what James was saying too, like incorporating that with the person who he was from the beginning, because he is not, like, they make a big point of saying he's not a human being anymore, but he's not a fly. He's a third thing. He's a new thing, so he's acting like a new thing and not just acting like a fly.
Yeah, and there's...
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's that one line that he offers when he's talking to Ronnie about insect politics and stuff.
I love that.
And then he says, I'm an insect who dreamt he was a human. The dream is over, and now he's awake. And again, you go from that transformation of he's not Brundle anymore. He's not the fly, or not a fly. He is, as you said, Danger. He's a third thing. And that third thing is the merging of these two. Like he's creating a brand new humanoid or brand new insect. Like there's something else here. So now it's about more than just realization. It's about self-discovery.
Yeah. There's you could tell throughout his transformation, there is the scientific part of his mind is, even though he knows he's destroying himself, he's already crossed that line and he can't go back. He's still curious about what's happening scientifically and still excited by it in a lot of.
So the thing I like about the new creature, as we're kind of calling it, I like that it takes the impulsivity of a fly and then adds it to what I consider the true nature of humans, because I don't think a giant fly would just attack us. Like, I mean, it needs to eat and it needs to whatever, but I don't feel like it would actively attack. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know a lot about flies. But the fact that he tells her you need to leave, or, I'm going to do bad things to you, like, that to me was more like the human destructive, murderous, I need to feed, I'll kill and eat whatever I can kind of thing, being mixed with the impulsivity of the fly. And it felt like he actively stays in the doorway of the room he's in versus the room she's in, right? Like, I feel like he's mustering all of his strength to fight off the impulsivity. And he's like, you need to go. I can't control this for long. And it's that mixing that makes the new creature for me, because it's one, it's completely unpredictable, but two, it also makes total sense with the two things that were mixed.
And then that kind of goes into the end of the movie too, where he goes to the doctor's office and steals her back because he wants his baby to be born, because he's, again, the scientific part of him, even though he knows he's dangerous and he's going to do these terrible things, the scientific part of him is like, well, what happens then? What happens when this new thing is born? Like, what is that going to be? The last part of me? And what would happen if I spliced myself with her now? And could I continue to be human if I were to incorporate another human into me, or the three of us all together? It's pretty horrifying what he's proposing to do in all of them.
Yeah, I like how he wants to protect her until it's self-serving. Like, as soon as that's a piece of me, then that overrides her safety completely. And I think it makes perfect logical sense, but it's so dangerous and so true to life. Don and I talk all the time about, I call it the white liberal line, which is like people like me profess that we will do anything, but there comes that line of choosing between yourself and others.
Right.
And it's different for everybody. But I think that it really hits what Brundle Fly does here, because it's I'll protect you while I can, get the hell out of here. But then, oh shit, now it's about me again. So now you don't matter.
Yeah. And I mean, you get the feeling it was always about him.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
he never really, he said get out of here, but he was saying that because he felt like it was the right thing to say, not because he believed it to protect her. Because, yeah, like you're saying, the second that is self-serving for him again, he backtracks, you know, and yeah.
I'd like to believe he did it for the right reasons. I want to hold on to that little piece of his humanity, and then it's gone as he becomes the monster. But I'm good either way.
He was always kind of the monster, right? That's kind of what the movie's saying. This thing just helped unleash, like, and it's kind of what you're actually saying too. You know, the human part of him. The fly doesn't want to eat people. The human being is the one that hurts other people.
Well, I mean, the mere fact that the entire film he's saying, oh, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to do this great thing, but everything's like, that should win a Nobel Prize, right? Like that should get me recognition. That should put my name on shit. You know, like it's always there. It's always that double standard of sorts.
Well, it's almost like the character that Oscar Isaac plays in Ex Machina, where it seems as though he peaked really young. And now it's about trying to replicate whatever that is or expand upon it, where I think in that movie he had written some code for a social network or whatever at like 13. And now we're not sure if he actually created the machines or the machines were created by his code. And the same thing with Brundle, where they talk about, at 20, he was a runner-up for the Nobel Peace Prize in physics. And you would think that if someone were up for the Nobel Peace Prize when they were around 20, they would have had a lot more offers. They would have had a lot more stuff going for him, because you don't get the indication that he has anything going for him other than
he lives in a warehouse, dude. Like,
well, I mean,
he's got a whole big space.
But I mean, in the sense of professionally, James, to where he's happy or he's glad that he's able to use this one research facility's money because they don't ask any questions. So he can do what he wants to with their money to build something, but doesn't want them to know, because if they know, then they get to claim his research.
Well, there's him at 20 going, oh, I am, I'm right here. I'm at the edge. So he's like, I need to build something or make something that's going to live up to the hype that I've created or has been created around me. So he kind of voluntarily, I think, goes into withdrawal from the world. He has no friends or family. He only works on this thing. I think they said he was working on it for 6 years or something like that. So that, not that he is only happy to work on his projects and that's what it is. I think he's like, when I reemerge, I'm going to blow everybody away.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's going to be my moment. I almost had the moment before when I was 20, but that wasn't it. Like I need to just come, go off like a bomb or something. The whole world is going to know who I am when I come out of hiding, which again is a, a crazy hubris moment. That's not how a normal human being or a well-adjusted, let's say, human being should be thinking about themselves and their position in the world.
I have a lot of thinking to do. No.
Wait till they hear this podcast. We'll blow them all away.
Exactly. Jeez. We'll win every award now because that's all we care about. I would say Gina Davis's performance is also just phenomenal. Like her casting as this character, I think, works so well because Gina has that perfect line of seeming innocent and vulnerable and also powerful and able to take care of herself, but also caring. Like, and I mean that as all of her roles, like she just kind of has that feeling anyway. And I I literally was like, was this role written for her? Like, obviously there's the original, but I mean, in this script, like, did they have Gina Davis in mind? Because I felt like she was so perfect for this.
Yeah, she's complex and layered. So I wouldn't disagree if someone told me that this was specifically written for her, because she does it so well. Even if you look at a film like The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is one of the best Christmas movies ever. The same situation is taking place there, where she's not one-dimensional. I can't think of any movie I've seen her in or television show I've seen her in where she was one-dimensional. So I mean, I would definitely buy it if someone said this was written for her, because it fits in with so many other things that she's done. You know, A League of Their Own, for that matter, because she's the same type of compassion, the same type of leadership, independence. That you see in her is what you in that film is what you see in this film, and vulnerability for that matter.
And I missed one of the important characteristics. Also, her sarcasm and just like biting back at people, you know, give me your key and get out. Like, she has that same sort of bite in Beetlejuice sometimes, you know, just like that. I don't know the word for it, but I feel like this role works really, really well for her.
Yeah, I think it's her as an actress that gives this role a lot of that, because I don't know if her character Ronnie has a real big arc as a character, right? Like, it's not like Ronnie is one person in the beginning and changes to another. She changes a little bit in response to, you know, Brundle's story. But she has all the emotional moments, like all the emotion of the movie, which it's a pretty emotional movie. A lot of people call this a love story. And it's certainly kind of woven into it. I don't know if it's, I would call it a love story per se, like a toxic love story, maybe.
Oh, most definitely toxic.
But she carries that whole thing herself.
Well, then, if it wasn't written for her, maybe she just made it amazing. So either way, it's fantastic for me.
Yeah. The end of the movie is wonderfully gross. Like, I would say this is the end of this movie, and the creature effects are like on a par with The Thing, which is kind of held up as the gold standard of these kind of practical monster effects. There's a little bit more in The Thing, but it's just as gross and just as interesting to watch this Brundlefly thing that it becomes, that's just puking, and there's these little antennas, and it's slimy, and things are sliding off its body by the end, and it's just all these chunks of meat everywhere. It's just like
that's the best part.
Horrifying.
Well, the meat makes us crazy. I'm sorry, the flesh makes us crazy. According to Brundle.
No, the stuff falling off of him and splatting on the floor. That's the key thing to me in this film. Like, that's the scene that sticks with me. So gross and perfect.
And the puking on the editor's hand and on his foot, and dissolving them, and then eating the like goo that it turns into. It's just, I was getting kind of queasy, to be honest. You know, I have a pretty high tolerance for this kind of stuff. You know, I write gross body horror a lot with my own writing, but just looking at it and going on the ride with the film was making me kind of nauseous.
Well, and the sound is so good. Like, that's what kicks it over for me. Like, if I was just watching without sound, I don't think it'd be as gross to me. But there's something about that permeating another sense for you that just, yeah.
Well,
fantastic.
And Brundle has this, he's staring down Stathis as he's doing it. So he, vomits on his hand and then looks at him. And then when he's on the ground, he, just looms over him, vomits on his ankle and his foot and everything. And he just looks at him while the foot is dissolving. And it's one of those things of, you're not sure if he's happy with what he did. I mean, you're sure he's happy with what he did. Or if it's one of those things that, like, he's getting pleasure in watching this guy in so much pain who was coming to take away Ronnie from him.
I mean, isn't that the dream, doing that to your significant other's ex? Oh, wait, maybe Maybe that's just me. We shouldn't talk about this anymore.
Yeah, James, I'm going to need those telepods back from your house, man.
You have a key.
Anyway,
while we're talking about things that grossed us out, the thing that got me the most in this whole film was because I didn't remember it, but it's the arm wrestling. And and when the other dude's arm just snaps, holy shit. Like I literally jumped and I was like, oh my God, yes, but it was also like, holy shit, what? And I mean, maybe I've seen the puke scene so many times that it doesn't affect me anymore. Like I don't remember seeing it when I was younger. Like I know I saw it, but I don't remember how I felt about it,
Right.
But yeah, this one, the wrist, it could also be that that's something I can actually identify with, like maybe that's why it got me more viscerally, but God damn, that scene's great.
Well,
I want to write something this good.
Even to talk about that scene, because we talked a little bit about toxic masculinity earlier and kind of the abusive nature of things. But that whole moment where he moves in on Tawny at the bar and then he's like, I got $100 that says I can beat you in arm wrestling. And if I win, I get to take the girl. And her response is like, what? Which was kind of an interesting thing to throw in there as far as her reaction. But the idea that he feels entitled to, if I win, I get to take her too. And not necessarily her reaction, but the fact that the guys kind of laughed it off, not in the sense of, oh, you can't beat me. They laughed it off as far as like, yeah, right, you're going to take my girl away from me. Sure, sure, yeah, if you win, yeah, sure, of course.
She even says, I'm not a prostitute. And he gives her like a look like, oh, yeah.
Because that's a normal reaction. No, I mean, there's a lot to be said there, too, though, because that's such a reflection of what his fear is. Like, he's replacing his part in this story. So in his other life, he thinks somebody's trying to swoop in and take his girl. And he puts himself in a position where the story is different. And now he's the one in power. Right. And he's swooping in and taking somebody's girl.
It is. It's a cycle of abuse, even because, he feels like he's the victim. So then he goes and victimizes somebody else.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not even the focus of the story. It's just like adding more layers and more complexity to him as a character and what he's kind of dealing with.
Wow. Yeah. Now I have to watch it all over again. All right, so that brings us to the point where we talk about movies people should check out if they liked this film. Don always has 842 movies, so Danger, you get to go first, and then I will add one because that's how it works. You can name as many as you want, though.
Oh, yeah. I didn't write a list before because I didn't know we were doing this, but I mentioned The Thing before. The Carpenter film, The Thing. So I would suggest, if you like this, to go check out The Thing, because that's probably the other real great creature feature from the era. I think it came out maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years before this one did. And beyond that, I would also say any other Cronenberg movie, especially the ones from the 80s, where he was really into the body horror aspects. His later films, the ones from the 2000s up into now, kind of get out of that a little bit. It's still there, but they kind of are more dramas and focusing on other things, more of psychological. But like this, but Videodrome is kind of along the same lines as this, or Rabid, or trying to think of what else he did back in the 80s. I don't know, even Existenz, stuff like that. Yeah, I'd say just Cronenberg's whole filmography, or something like The Thing, right in line with The Fly.
Very cool. So I try to do like what would be a good double feature with this, and obviously I think The Thing is up there. But I'm going Videodrome. I feel like the whole like humans not understanding the flesh or being scared of the line with the flesh. Like, I think that plays in heavily. And I feel like these are two movies that would just be absolutely fantastic together. So All right, Don, you're up.
All right, 842 actually. All right, I already mentioned Jurassic Park, so I'm not going to do that again. I will start off with this. If you really like Gina Davis and Goldblum working together, there's a little film called Transylvania 65000. Nice little comedy. Very catchy song. But as far as other films, Eve of Destruction with Gregory Hines. This is going to sound weird, but Spider-Man's 1 and 2. For the fact of the Green Goblin creating himself and basically descending into madness, by experimenting on himself, and the same thing with Dr. Octavius or Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2. To keep it with Marvel, I would say Incredible Hulk would be one. A film that I guess didn't get as big as, and this is no pun intended, that should have been bigger than it was. Is Downsized with Matt Damon and Christoph Waltz, where people volunteer to shrink themselves in order to save the planet or to help, reduce their carbon footprint and save the planet. They Live, any of the Alien series, especially Alien and Aliens, Gremlins, The Island of Dr. Moreau, King Kong, The Toxic Avenger. Hollow Man is another one that I would put in the. I would have that as a double feature with The Fly, for those same aspects of toxic masculinity. Scientists believing that there's nothing wrong. I'm making myself better, or just the fact that it's an experiment that does not go the way they plan it to. And Splice, and for literary purposes, I have to include Kafka's Metamorphosis.
Well, then I'll include Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So there.
See, I left that there for you. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm going to leave it. You can have it.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite.
This was actually a big influence on one of my books that I've called "I Will Rot Without You." It's about a guy who is, when his girlfriend breaks up with him, and these cockroaches in his apartment give him this toxic mold, which starts rotting his body apart piece by piece. So there's this whole thing of him trying to win back his ex, and then he's kind of got this other thing with another neighbor, and there's all these people in his apartment with him, and there's these bugs kind of menacing him from the sidelines the whole time, and it's just this whole like step-by-step degradation of his own body as he's kind of dealing with his heartbreak. And just the visuals from this movie that have stuck with me since I was a kid are working their way into my own art all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's, to me, that's the pinnacle of good art. It's when it influences other art. And like I said, clearly I love this fucking script, but I love almost everything about this film. And if it's influencing your art and you're cranking out stuff that feels like this, then man, I'm all for that. So great.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So let's bring it back to you, Danger. Where can people find you online or stalk you and get keys to your apartment or whatever else, or house? Yeah. I don't know where you live. No.
Yeah. Anyone who follows me on Twitter gets a key to my apartment. The thing is, I'm not going to tell you where I live, though. So if you could figure it out, you are invited. It's basically an open invitation. Then, if you could figure it out, though. No, but
and Twitter, you want them to show up in your shower, right? Like that's where you should meet them at once they get there.
It's the only acceptable place. Don't be going in my fridge, okay? Come on. Yeah, Twitter.com. You can find me as Danger_Slater. And that's kind of where I keep, things updated. So if you want to know what's going on, what I got released, the latest, I'm on all the socials, but Twitter is the best place. Again, Danger_Slater.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for coming back, man. I had a great time watching this and talking about it. And like I said, now I have to go watch it again because you guys brought up shit that I'm like, fuck, I got to go see this again. So, but it's okay because I loved it. So I'll rewatch it.
Just don't chew your nails while watching it.
I chew my nails all the time, so I'm just in trouble. Anyway, so I guess that wraps it up for this week. So as always, I am James Sabata.
And I am merging with James in the telepod. What the hell's going on?
And we, whatever we become, will be here next week here at thenecronoma.com.